the bottom line is we block all of the really good possibilities in our life just by our beliefs. So it's fundamental to just change how you think, change how you see yourself, change what your beliefs are, and then all those possibilities open up for you.
What is up, Impact Heroes? Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Rick Ornelas. Thank you for spending some time with us today because we know time's a valuable resource and we're going to make it worth your while. I appreciate each and every one of you, not just for listening, but for who you are. I know you're sparking change to make the world a better place every day, and I am humbled and grateful for your efforts. It takes all of us doing our part to spread positive change, and that's what this show is all about. Motivating you with stories of struggle, courage, and hope to empower you to make a difference in your life and the lives of others.
In case you missed it.
We think we're bulletproof, we're fine. That's not going to happen to me. And the reality is that we're all vulnerable, it can happen to anybody and anytime. You're living proof that it did. How are you looking to impact on a bigger level now with regards to spreading cancer awareness?
That's where I'm enjoying going out on stage and speaking, of just trying to share my story. The biggest impact for me is to do everything that I can to get people to understand, number one, stress is the silent killer. And number two, men don't get checked. We don't go to the doctor. And I think about it, breaks my heart. There's no easy cancer, but if you catch those early enough, then there's a great chance you're going to be cancer free. But we don't do that. We wait till we're
Available everywhere you listen to your podcasts.
Welcome back, Impact Heroes. Today we have the pleasure of speaking to our latest iSpark Change social impact hero, and she is a special one indeed. Our guest today helps her clients in overcoming fears and doubts to achieve their goals. She knows that change is 80% between your ears, and you need to lose self-doubt, anxiety, and fear of life's changes. I agree 100% on that one. Her passion for coaching stems from a place of deep empathy. She understands the challenges her clients face, having overcome similar obstacles in her own life. She knows that having someone who has walked the same path can make all the difference in navigating significant life changes, and I completely agree there as well. She has a wide range of coaching expertise, including supporting transgender individuals in their transitions, parents of transgender individuals, and empowering women entrepreneurs to conquer imposter syndrome and self-doubt. She helps her clients realize that while change may seem intimidating at first, it doesn't have to be overwhelming. And she always encourages them to embrace the journey, have fun, and revel in the joy of living a life that resonates with their true selves, which she has done herself. And I will definitely get into more about that with her on the show. So please welcome the authentic, confident, and empowering Wendy Cole. Wendy, thank you for coming on the iSpark Change podcast.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here, Rick, and I'm so happy to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to this interview. And, after reading through your background and everything, I know our audience will appreciate hearing your story. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Rick.
So, Wendy, we see you as someone who is spreading positive change in the world because your actions have a positive effect on others. Someone that by our definition, we call a social impact hero. And my question to you is, do you see yourself as a hero?
Oh, I think when I started out, I didn't really see that. I just knew that I just loved helping other people confront what they needed to do. And since I do feel that, yes, I'm putting myself out there for everyone to see as an example of what's possible for them.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part because I think so many people, Wendy, they maybe dream or they think like, hey, oh, could I ever do this? No. And then those self-doubt that I mentioned in the intro that you
Right.
talk about a lot, the self-doubt and the limiting beliefs, those come in and they're like, no, that's just a dream. I could never do that. So, to be able to support that is hugely important in people.
Right.
So they understand they can, right? They can accomplish, whatever that dream is.
Hmm. No,
So go ahead, please.
no, I've it This was sort of an evolution for me from like my first 2 years. I transitioned in 2015. I did it in 6 months. I walked into the world as myself, just finding joy in places that I never knew possible. And I left all the doubt and the fears behind. And that's kind of what I just decided, this is really not as hard as what people make it out to be. I conquered the beliefs that it wasn't possible. And, in terms of our life, most of what we have in life is possibilities, and
Hmm.
it's our beliefs. The thoughts that we have, the little voice in your head, it talks to you. And you have to be careful what it says because you're listening.
Yeah.
And, the bottom line is we block all of the really good possibilities in our life just by our beliefs. So it's it's fundamental to just change how you think, change how you see yourself, change, what your beliefs are, and then all those possibilities open up for you.
Yeah, that's those are wise words, and it's interesting, Wendy, because a friend of mine, he likes to say, "Your mind is a dangerous place. Don't go there alone."
Oh, I
And
totally agree.
yeah, and it's that self-talk, that is always prevalent for so many of us, probably everybody, but for so
Mhm.
many of us that we, either it's doing us good or it's doing us harm
Right.
in that self-talk. So I do want to get into how you manage to overcome that or to deal with that. Before we
Mhm.
get there, I want to go back to a place I always like to start in the show is that we see you as that social impact hero, right? Affecting others. Well, every hero has their origin story of how they got to the point of doing that heroic work, right? So
Mhm.
what was it for you? Now, obviously, you want to help others in their journey, right? The way by learning from what you've gone through in your journey. So, how did you get to that point to just like wherever the story you feel it's appropriate to begin the story for yourself? Share that.
Okay. Well, first of all, this is how I was born. This wasn't a decision, and it doesn't go away. I first became self-aware of feeling differently about myself before the age of 5.
Oh wow.
I couldn't hold it in by the age of 10. I knew that I was a girl. And keep in mind, this is the late 1950s. I told my parents I'm a girl. I went through a few things that I did to demonstrate this to them, especially to my mother, whom I was really hopeful she would help me. But what I neglected to, realize, I didn't have the words to put around any of this then. She was a typical 50s housewife, totally subservient to my father. And there's a long story behind my father, but it came down to me being taken to a psychiatric center at age 10
Oh,
and
wow.
threatened with being committed and fixed
Mm,
if I didn't stop insisting that I was a girl. So that began a life of shame, fear, repression, anxiety, guilt, everything. And I managed to struggle through high school, just totally immersed in studies, getting grades and all of that stuff, but very unhappy, very unsocial. By the end of, I even forced myself to try and fit in as a male by going to an all men's college.
oh, wow.
You can see how well that worked.
Yeah.
I've since come to the feeling that, after all, I was never a man. Gender is between the ears, not the legs. And I knew how I felt. So in 1970, as I was graduating college, I tried to transition. That was another complete disaster, thanks to the medical community.
Wow.
In that time, I was in New York State. And at that time, anywhere in New York State, including New York City, if I appeared in public as I am now, after being assigned male at birth,
Hmm.
I would be arrested, fined, possibly even jailed,
Wow.
because it was against the state law. So I was talking to a group of psychiatrists. I was a case study patient of my psychiatrist had taken me there. And I started talking, and about less than 5 minutes into talking with this group of about 15 to 20 psychiatrists from the area, one of them stands up, looks at me, and says, I've heard all I can, want to deal with today. I'll see you folks all next quarter. Looks at me and goes, You're a freak. You should move to New York City and turn tricks like the rest of them. That's an
Wow.
MD psychiatrist.
Yeah.
So the next time, at that point, that was a huge pivotal point in my life. I had heard up until then, oh, once he has a wife, a career, once he has a family and a house, he'll forget all about being a girl. First time I heard that was at age 10, and then it was preached to me from that time
Mhm.
forward. It doesn't work. So I found out from my psychiatrist this is considered a psychological condition with no treatment and no cure. Well, it was like that all the way through the 20th century.
Another 30 years or so, or 25 years, or like a good
So
amount of time.
it didn't change, Rick, until 2012. 2012 was when it was no longer considered a psychological condition, that it was considered treatable by hormone therapy, the psychological therapy, and any necessary surgeries. And that was huge. I didn't find that out until 2014, late in 2014. I was in a very dark place. I was seriously at risk of killing myself. Had it all planned out, everything. But I decided to go online and see again if anything had changed.
Hmm.
And I found out that it had. And at that instance, I went to my wife, who was in the family room. I said, Remember what we talked? Because I did come out to her in 1978, figuring we'd be divorced. I was just a mess. I couldn't take this. I felt trapped by being married, having a family,
So you
everything.
were married at a young age. Sorry to cut you off, but so you were married
Oh,
at a young age then.
I was married no, I actually got married at 27, I think, 26,
Okay.
but young, but not that young.
Yeah. Yeah. Relatively young, but okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't take it anymore. And I was also talking in my sleep that I was a woman. And
Mm.
my wife woke me up and demanded an explanation. So I told her everything, figuring we'd be divorced by morning. And for her own reasons, which I later found out, she decided to stay together as long as I didn't do anything about this. Well, of course, I wasn't going to do anything about it because there was nothing to do.
Yeah.
The only way people used to do this before was, you know, leave everything behind, move to a new location, and pop up as as a new person.
Yeah. How long
And
had
that,
you been married at that point, Wendy?
when I first told her in 1978, we'd been married for 4 years,
Okay. And then you stayed together for how long after that?
a total of 40 years.
Wow.
So in January of 2015, I had my first therapy appointment because I told her I was going to start with therapy. I don't know where this is going to lead. I have no idea what I'm going to do. But, you know, I started therapy, and that first therapy session was just mind blowing for me. I hadn't talked to anybody about how I felt, what I felt like in 45 years. That's
Jeez.
45 years of repression, depression, guilt, shame, everything.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
So, my first therapy appointment was just absolutely wonderful. I spilled my guts everywhere. It was just everything just came out. It was a longer session because it was intake. And on the way out, I looked down to say goodbye. And Stephanie was sitting there with my file folder on her lap. And she looked at me and she said, What's your name? And I immediately snapped back, Wendy. And much to my joy, amazement, she crossed out my male facsimile's name and wrote Wendy on my file. And from that day forward, I was Wendy. And I've reminded her of this numerous times because we've become friends now that I no longer see her professionally.
Mm.
I said, you were the first person in 67 years of my life to actually accept me for who I am and what I am. And it turns out, fortunately and gratefully, she was the first of many people.
Yeah. And
So,
now here you are. And now
and
you're
now here I
sharing.
am.
Yeah, here you are sharing the story. So thank you for sharing all of that, Wendy. And I won't pretend to imagine how challenging that would have been for all those years, right? For all those years. So the question that comes to mind um, is once you made that determination. Well, actually, a little farther along. So, is when did you? So we'll fast forward a little bit. Okay, when did you decide that? Hey, I want to help others with my story because that's really for you know what we're talking about, that heroic aspect of having a positive impact on others and trying to make others better. When did you say, hey, I feel like I can impact others and make a difference in their lives?
I would say first, for about the first 2 years, I was out to all of my neighbors. I talked with them. I shared my life. I shared my story. And in the street that I lived on, there was three gay couples, two or three hetero couples, and then some single apartments.
What
And
state were you living at this point?
I was living in New Hope, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Okay.
And it's a little river town, beautiful community, very lovely people. And I had a blast living there. I lived there for 5 years. And one of the gay couples, Chad and Jason, left flowers at my door one night. And when I came home, oh, welcome to the neighborhood, Chad and Jason, number 15. Okay. So I waited for them to be around, which happened to be the next day, Sunday. And I went down to see them on a Sunday evening. I walked into their apartment at 9 o'clock that night. And there was a running bet in the neighborhood whether or not I was cisgender or whether or not I'm in transition. So I solved the bet. And then I just opened up and I said, look, I'm an open book. Ask me anything you want to, and absolutely nothing is off limits.
Wow.
And I've adopted that ever since.
Wow. So how liberating did that feel to go from all those years of the repression and not being able to express what you wanted to saying, I'm an open book.
God, Rick, it was just so freeing, emotionally, physically, everything. It was just very, very freeing. And I don't regret it one bit.
Yeah, like some huge
And
weight off your shoulders.
oh, huge weight. All that anxiety, depression, the years of repressing this, gone, gone. And it just kept evolving through over time through that first 2 years. I didn't automatically just come out to everybody. One of my goals in doing this was the ability to blend in to society as any other woman.
Hmm.
And I can do that. It's not at all hard.
Yeah.
But in 2017, I finally got my surgical date at NYU Medical Center. I had surgery with Dr. Rachel Bluebond at NYU. It was an amazing experience, totally something I absolutely needed to do. I had a lot of gay friends in the community where I was living, and I would walk into the bar at happy hour and just I went there for conversation. I
Hmm.
loved it. And they would go, Wendy, how can you do that? Referring to my surgery.
Hmm.
And some of the guys would even grab me, whatever. And I would go, I'm having my birth defect corrected.
Yeah.
That's how I viewed it. And
Yeah.
it all goes back to genders between the ears, not the legs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Very, very
but
interesting.
the experience, Rick, in New York was where I really began to blossom into I can really help other people.
Hmm.
I can do this. I volunteered there for a while, helping other girls get ready for surgery, all of that. I volunteered at the medical school, being a practice patient for doctors who were graduating.
For like conversations or what?
No, I was a practice transgender patient.
So what did that look like? When you say practice patient, like what does that mean?
Oh, they set it up. It was great. I had a script of the type of person that I was and I was supposed to follow. And I would be in a room like I was in a doctor's office, and the
Mhm.
medical student would come in and they had questions they were supposed to ask me. And it was amazing how hesitant they were to really ask questions. They were
Yeah.
supposed to get into my entire life, and very few did. The only medical student that did a great job with this was a young Asian American girl who was born and raised in San Francisco and knew the whole drill.
Yeah, she maybe more exposure, I
Oh,
guess.
yeah.
Yeah, to different types of people.
And
So,
that's the other thing is very few people have exposure to people like me.
yeah, sure. Yeah, I can understand that, especially in certain parts of the country and everything.
Mhm.
So, okay, so as you're doing these different things and I would say, you tell me if this is right, Wendy, healing in the process, going through some type of a healing in that time period.
Very
Um,
much so, Rick.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine that, even doing the practice, being the practice person, even being the practice person, that would be very cathartic. That would help you
Mhm.
to to heal in many ways because it kind of desensitizes, if you will, that having to go through that initial experience or the any uncomfortability or anything
Oh,
like
yeah.
that.
Absolutely
Yeah.
does, Rick. It
Yeah.
absolutely does. And I met people in New York City. I was introduced to people in New York City. I was invited by Dr. Bluebond to a photo shoot. That's where I met my friend Rick, who was a professional photographer in the fashion industry
Good name.
for for decades. And he now has a nonprofit organization where he uses his photographic skills to take pictures of people with rare diseases, rare birth conditions, etc., that the pharma industry won't do research on because there's not enough profit in them. So he
Wow.
uses his photographs to get donations for the research.
Oh, very cool. Yeah,
And
he'd be someone I would like to talk about, possibly having as a guest. So if you want to connect us, we can
absolutely,
talk about that off air.
I'll give you his contact info.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
But
Yeah.
I also met his ex-partner, Joseph, who was a makeup artist for, over 45 years in the city, in the fashion industry. And I also, NYU set me up with an interview at Huffington Post in August of 2018. 4 hours in their headquarters with interview and photo shoots, and I had a blast.
Yeah.
It was, and all the while, I know I can do more with this.
Yeah, so it sounds like, Wendy, it sounds like you were really progressing in the level of sharing, the level of impact, the level of, how others can relate to your story, of how others can relate to your story and how it can help them.
Right.
So where is that out now? Where is that at now with your level of impact and what that looks like today?
Oh, what that looks like today is I'm in the process of doing podcast interviews like I am with you, and putting myself out there in front of a lot of different audiences so that people can actually hear my story, hear about me, and, you know, actually experience this and in some ways change perspectives for people about people like me.
Yeah.
And I'm also in the process of writing a book. Underlying current is my life. And I talk about everything that I learned about life and living, especially over the last 9 years.
Yeah.
it, it's been amazing and wonderful. And I had to put my coaching work on pause last year, 2023, to deal with a lot of other situations. And I personally moved to Rhode Island, where I'm currently living, and I'm restarting my coaching practice, and I'm putting myself out there as much as I possibly can.
Yeah. Well, you're doing the right thing in sharing, because one thing that I tell every guest that we consider a hero is that, just like the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell, hero's journey, I look at every hero, as every person has an obligation to share what they've learned in the service of others, to be able to share, to make others' journey maybe a little bit easier, maybe a little bit brighter, maybe they have less, pitfalls and potholes and things to overcome, because they've learned from someone that has already traversed that journey.
Mhm.
And so my guess is, and tell me if this is correct, Wendy, my guess is that there's not a lot of support, or not a lot of individuals like you that are sharing their story, or are offering, advice or coaching to individuals that are going through what you went through. Would that be accurate to say?
I would say that's reasonably accurate, Rick. And the other thing that, I don't want children ranging anywhere from, single numbers to teenagers or, early 20s even to experience what I experienced from their parents. So I'm now including working with parents of transgender children, and children meaning the relationship, not the age. I
Yeah,
don't care
yeah,
if you're 15, 25, 45. Your parents still go through the same questioning and all of that stuff. And I I feel that people don't need to go through that. Not if they have the right information. That's the problem with this is there's a lack of real information from somebody who's actually lived it. And when
yeah,
it comes to the people that I work with, I care about them deeply. I I know what they're going through, and this doesn't have to be a difficult and lengthy journey, as it were.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I bet there's even fewer resources for parents. I bet you there's even fewer resources for parents.
that's what I'm finding out
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
They're very much so. And whereas, people like myself are normally very closeted, very hidden, don't talk to anybody. In fact, a lot of times it's even scary for people to get on a Zoom conversation with me.
Hmm, not for
And,
me.
and I'm the least judgmental about any of this.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure.
So what I found out is parents who are dealing with this with their children
Yeah,
are equally closeted about it. They don't know how their friends and their neighbors are gonna take this. They don't know what to expect, and this was a complete surprise to them.
yeah.
And so it's a very difficult process for people, and that's why I'm putting myself out there as someone who can help them with this.
Yeah, and I think, I think that that is changing. Obviously, these type of things have taken a long time to change, compared to what you dealt with back in the 70s, and that, they are changing over time, and there's more acceptance, and there's more understanding, and there's more, you know people to share their stories, like yourselves. And that with that, it's like evolution in any area. It just unfortunately takes a long time, right? Like evolution does in every area, pretty much. It takes a while, right or wrong.
Right.
Yeah, it's probably
Now,
what's happening.
I've seen, of course, over my lifetime, I've seen significant and profound changes.
I bet.
And, in the last century, I couldn't even go into a doctor and talk about this.
Hmm.
I remember distinctly in going into a psychiatrist's office in Boston, and I talked with him for about 15 minutes, and he never said a word. I got up and left. That was it. So, yeah, things have changed, but it's all relative. Right now, younger people look at it as being difficult and takes a long time. And if that's what you believe, then it will.
Hmm. Yeah, like anything, right?
Right.
What you
So,
believe is your reality.
what I like to do is work with people as early as possible to help them change those beliefs, change how they see themselves, begin to accept themselves. You know, I would say for the first 67 years of my life, I hated myself.
Wow.
That's no way to live,
No.
but that's the way it was. And I love who I am now.
Mm. Yeah.
But
Yeah. That's great. I'm very happy that you seem at peace, right? That you seem at peace, and I can say that based on what you just said, that wasn't the case, not that long ago. So to be at peace, that's something that every human deserves, is to just have peace and contentment, and
exactly.
yeah, and so that you're at in a good place. So that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Rick.
So Wendy, a couple of final questions before we wrap up here, and we could probably talk for a lot longer about this, but to respect the show and the framework of the show, one question that we always ask our guests on the iSpark Change podcast is that we feel there are spark moments in life. There are these times where our actions have an effect on someone else that has a ripple effect that may not be seen right away, but is seen at some point in the future, that changes that individual's life, or that someone has an impact on you, and it changes your life. So share a story of positive change that's an example of a spark moment that either you impacted someone else or someone else has impacted you, that maybe the result that it's had, or maybe you don't yet know the result that it's had, but you know that it will be a positive result.
Well, I'll talk about one of my clients. When I started with her, she couldn't even look at the camera.
Mm,
And she said, I'm scared. I'm tired of living a lie, and I have no clue what I'm doing.
yeah, lost.
And my response to that was, great. That's why you're here. Let's get to work.
Hmm.
And we started. And within my first 6 sessions with her, she came back in for the sixth session. Her driver's license and legal name change done,
Oh wow.
and had decided she was going to start living full time. Still scared,
Yeah,
but
sure.
getting through it now and putting one foot in front of the other and going forward. Within 11 months, she did her surgeries and is living as her authentic self. And she's actually publishing a book now based on her life.
Yeah, good for her.
That's someone who was anxiety ridden. I met some friends and all who'd known her before. And the comment was, we didn't really like her before.
Mm, yeah,
But that's a very positive change in someone's life, and she's going on to make other changes with other people.
yeah. That's the ripple effect that we talk about, right? It's just like the
Exactly.
pebble in the pond. You don't know how far and wide that's going to go. So, a great example of a spark moment. Thank you very much for sharing that, Wendy. So, before we ask our final question here on the show, where can our audience connect with you? Where can they learn more about you? Where's the best place for that?
I have a special website just for that, meetwendycole.com. That's meetwendycole.com. From there, they can schedule a conversation with me. They can subscribe to my newsletter, and they can also click on one of the buttons that will take them to my main website where my podcasts are.
Okay, perfect. Well, we'll make sure that all that is in the show notes.
Thank you, Rick.
Wonderful. So one final question before we wrap up here, Wendy, and it's the same question we ask everyone as we close our interview time. And our goal at iSpark Change is to positively impact 1 billion people within 5 years of launching our upcoming social impact social media platform. Now, we know we can't do this alone. We know we need the help of impactful individuals like yourself to show others the way, because many people feel, as I used to, that they're too small to make a difference. So we value your thoughts and opinions as a social impact hero. So I want you to peer into the future, peer into the iSpark Change crystal ball, and tell me, what can the world become if everyone starts believing they can impact others in a positive way?
That would be a wonderful change in our society and in everyone's lives. And I see that as being a really, really worthwhile goal. And in my own way, I'm going to make a difference and do that as well.
Fantastic. And that's all we can ask from everybody is to make a difference. So thank you for taking time to share your heart and wisdom with our audience, Wendy. You came in and you over delivered as I expected. Your desire to be impactful is evident, and you're filled with passion, determination, and a heart of gratitude, which tells me you'll continue to have success in all facets of life. And this is only the beginning of your social impact.
Thank you, Rick. And I've really enjoyed being here with you.
Absolutely. Me too. All right, Impact Heroes, it's our stories that connect us all, and we loved hearing Wendy's today. Wendy Cole, you're not only an inspiring and amazing human being, you truly are an iSpark Change social impact hero. We'll see you all next time.
Do you want Rick to speak at your event? Here is what others have to say.
Did not know his story, and it was so inspirational, and his presence on stage, his authenticity was just incredible.
Performance made me feel some type of way. My name is Craig Siegel.
If you're looking for a speaker for your next event, hire Rick. I promise you this, you will not be disappointed.
Visit rickcornelis.com to book him today.
Remember, Impact Heroes, every positive action can be a spark moment that has a ripple effect that spreads far beyond the initial act. So go out there and spark change. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this episode, then please smash that 5-star rating on iTunes or Spotify and leave a review. We value your comments and we want to hear from you in the community. Thank you for listening. God bless you, and we'll see you next week on the iSpark Change podcast.